This RealAg Radio podcast is brought to you by the Authority brand family of herbicides from FMC. With 3 proven herbicide options, growers can choose extended pre-seed or pre-emergent weed control designed to fit different weed spectrums, cropping plans, and spring workloads. Talk to your local retailer to learn more.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio.
Hello and welcome to this Agronomic Monday on February 2nd. It is RealAg Radio on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM, and I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and today's Agronomic Monday brought to you by FP Genetics. Yes, that's right. We are into February. Finally, I just feel like it's going to be an excellent month. Did the groundhog see their shadow? Does it really matter? We know we've got 6 more weeks of winter. The question is, do we have 8? Do we have 10? I really hope not. I am ready for a bit of a warm-up, but I'm going to fully embrace February and all that it has to offer. The days are a little longer. The sun has actually been shining. It is very cold, but it's actually quite beautiful out. I did want to send a shout-out on today's show to Joanna and Jacob. It is their birthdays today, and at least one of them will hear this. On today's show, though, we do have Pete Johnson will join me. We've got an absolute fantastic list of agronomy questions and answers from all over Western Canada, a few out of the States, a few here in Ontario. We're going to tackle wheat, forages, miracle products. That's a big one these days. The weather, of course, lodging, all sorts of different things. You'll also hear from, of course, being that this show is brought to you by FP Genetics, we've got a product spotlight with Chad Yanchycki. You'll also hear from Sean Haney, talking to him about new and exciting varieties coming up for 2026, but also what's in the queue for 2027 and beyond. And this is one of those things that I know I find incredibly exciting, is always getting a look at, what's just beyond reach just right now, what might fit into your plans. I've got questions for Pete about, of course, getting your basic agronomy dialed in, because we know that's a key part of profitability. So that's going to be a key question today. Also, we are going to focus a little bit on annual forages, some fall seeded crops as well, because that ties into tonight's episode of The Agronomist as well. Now, thank you everyone for your fantastic feedback. Last week, we had so many emails, texts, etc. come in. You can text that listener line 1-855-776-6147. Or you can, of course, zip me an email, lsmith@realagriculture.com, or Sean Haney, shaney@realagriculture.com. Fantastic feedback from our Friday show, from all the discussions we had last week. There are, of course, just huge things happening in agriculture right now, on the policy stage, on the economic stage. And it was a really busy week, and it does mean a lot when you reach out and let us know with follow-up questions, with maybe critiques, maybe giving your own 2 cents about some of the things we're tackling. We appreciate it all. I do read every email, and we try at least to respond to every text, but we do listen or read each and every one of them. So thank you for that. As always, you can find more of what we do with Real Agriculture at RealAgriculture.com. You can, of course, watch all our videos on YouTube, and you can get your audio wherever you get your podcasts as well. So check that out. All right, without further ado, and with a tip of the hat to FP Genetics, let's get to today's show.
Now that's what I call Crop Protection 2026 edition from BASF. Coming at you with encore-worthy products canola farmers know and love. We've got all your favorite herbicides, Centurion ADV, Certitude, and new Liberty AM. Plus the headliner of fungicide, Cotegra. If your lineup doesn't sound this good, what are you waiting for? Lock in your set list and get ready to rock! AgSolutions.ca/CanolaFest.
Nearly 600 trials demonstrate that Rhizosorb allows growers to use as much as 50% less phosphorus without compromising yields in major row crops such as corn and soybeans. Multi-year, multi-location replicator research trials demonstrate that Rhizazorb at reduced application rates maintains or increases yields without lowering soil phosphorus levels. If you have additional questions about Rhizazorb, please contact your Phospholutations regional sales manager or visit phospholutations.com.
Co-op has been beside local farmers and ranchers for generations. With Western Canada's largest fuel network and a team of local agronomy experts, Co-op is built to keep your operation moving forward. With deep local knowledge of the factors affecting your farm, we're ready to provide trusted advice in the field and on the ground. Count on Co-op to support your entire operation from season to season. Co-op, here for your farm, here for your family. Visit your Co-op Agro Center to talk to a team member today.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith. Yes, it is Monday. It is Groundhog Day. And today's show brought to you by FP Genetics. FP Genetics brings new seed genetics to Canadian farms, empowering growers to thrive in ever-changing conditions. Visit fpgenetics.ca and join thousands of Canadian growers who trust FP Genetics to deliver innovative, reliable seed genetics season after season. Experience the next wave with FP Genetics. Bringing in now Peter Wheat Pete Johnson, possibly a frozen Peter Wheat Pete Johnson. How are you?
I'm awesome, thanks, Lyndsey. But man, is it cold out there. It has been just brutally cold here in Ontario for the whole weekend. And actually, I don't know, how long is the cold run now? It's gotta be at least 3 weeks long that we have been brutally cold. And this polar vortex that they've started, that's what they call it now. Dang, it is really hanging tough. Minus 25, minus 26 at night in southwestern Ontario. Are you kidding me? That's just nasty.
It's bonkers, Pete, because, of course, our friends in Western Canada are like, okay, well, that's just January for you. But you're right. This is Southern Ontario. Even here in the East, we typically, in an average winter, we hit that minus 30 a time or two. It's a few nights in January, and then things sort of improve. But you're right. We've got better daytime highs for the next week, but the nights are still bitterly cold, and it's really hanging on for at least the next 10 days. So I know we've got decent snow cover. I'm not super worried about what's underneath there, but with all this cold beyond, and my heart goes out to all the livestock producers. We know that has been a struggle over the past few weeks. But does this cold, are there areas without snow cover that, this could be impacting, let's say, fall seeded crops, et cetera, or is it just the humans that are suffering?
So, Lyndsey, for the most part, I think we have pretty good snow cover. But as I look out the window of my office, I can see the grass on my lawn, and you just go, how can that be? Well, the wind has been so wicked so many times. Now, I will say that if you have a good cover of alfalfa or winter wheat or barley or whatever, there's enough snow trapped. Like even in my lawn, I can see the grass, but there is snow there. And so that's probably enough. You get 2 inches of snow. You have a really good R value. It's rare that a minus 25 would do anything. But if you're down in Chatham, Kent or Essex, where they don't have as much snow, and you have windswept knolls where it actually took all the snow away, and you happen to have a perennial or a winter annual crop like barley or wheat or whatever, rye planted, yeah, I'd be a little concerned just because we need that snow cover. And I think 99.9% of us all do have that snow cover. But man, in the warmer places that get less snow, you may well have the odd spot where you're kind of going like, that's a little concerning.
Mm-hmm. Let's just hope, a couple more weeks gets it out of the system and then better days ahead. That's my hope. I feel, and I'll share, and people who listen to the show have heard this before, February is actually my least favorite month in Ontario, but I feel like we had such a terrible January that February can't help but just be great. So that's what I'm going with.
Absolutely. And Lyndsey, the days are getting longer. Just keep focused on that. Like every day right now, 2 minutes longer. Soon it's going to be almost 3 minutes longer every day. Yes, spring is coming.
That's right. I do feel like we're on the downward slope towards spring. So let's hope. Okay. Now there's several things we're going to talk about on today's show. We will also have, in our next segment, we'll have our product spotlight from our FP Genetics team member. But we've got a laundry list of things to cover. And, one of them is, and this is coming up in probably every conversation that I have right now, whether it's an agronomist, farmers, etc., is talking about, of course, that profitability question for the year ahead. And I feel like there's a couple different camps here. One, it's the people that are like, I have my tried and true, I've got my budgets down. I know margins are tight, but I've got my basic agronomy. I'm going to focus there. You've got others who are like, I feel like I need to cut some costs, and they're trying to find some savings. And then you've got those who we're going to talk about today. You've got this added interest in perhaps a silver bullet, and maybe trying to find that one magic thing that's going to add to yield, maybe not cost a lot, that's really going to be the key to profitability. Pete, what are you seeing on the landscape? How do we broach this?
Oh, Lyndsey, it was I can't believe you used that term silver bullet, because I think I've had at least 10 farmers talk to me in the past week. And in the conversation, it's always, Pete, we're looking for the silver bullet because economics are tight. And so, what is the silver bullet? Oh gosh, Lyndsey, come on. If we knew what the silver bullet was, we'd be using it every year. It doesn't exist. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't look at new products. You 100% should look at new products. But it strikes me that every time agriculture gets tough, we're struggling to find any profitability in field crops. That's when the weird, wild, and wonderful salesmen seem to come out in droves. And I talked to a grower last week. He said, man, Pete, I have somebody down my driveway trying to sell me something off the wall at least once a week. And I'm going like, man, where do they come from? So, Lyndsey, at the end of the day, you have to stick to the basic agronomics. That's what drives yield. And if you get the basics right, you are 90% of the way there. Maybe you're 95 or even 99% of the way there. But you're not 100% of the way there. And I'm not sure we even know what 100% is quite yet. But when these people come down your laneway, or you go to a show and they're telling you, they're selling something that just has going to do wonderful things for you, and it's, just going like, where's this product been my whole life? Like, this is too good to be true. You just stop right there and you say, okay, if it sounds too good to be true, what do you think, Lyndsey?
It probably is.
Exactly. Yeah. So get them to give you some product. And I've had this conversation so many times. If it's really that good, they should provide you with enough product for you to do test strips on your farm, and you tell them, I'll give you the data. And if it works out positively, oh my gosh, call Pete and tell him we found this miracle product. We found the silver bullet. You were wrong, Pete. There is one. And Pete will be the greatest salesman for that product that you have ever seen in your life, because we have to find things that work, and I'm sure we will. But the claims that are made for some of these products, Lyndsey, and you look at them, I mean, the latest one was a calcium product, and they're trying to sell calcium to farmers that have 6,000 to 8,000 parts per million calcium on their soil test. Man, if you've got that much calcium, you're based on limestone, and you've got that much calcium in your soil, like, how does more calcium help? It can't. I just cannot see any way it makes sense. So in that situation, it's like, yeah, we'll do the trials, but we're not paying for the product. Do it. And again, if it works, then tell Pete.
That is so really good advice. And the other thing, and you started with saying it's important to try new things. Yes, but exactly that. But realistically, what I find interesting, and probably somebody could do a deep dive on this, is that at times we can be resistant to, let's say, a new hybrid or a new variety, or maybe, changing up our weed control, etc., because those are sort of the things we've always done. And yet, you're right, a shiny new something cool that promises or overpromises comes along, and it is tempting. I mean, it's just human nature. But at the same time, great advice, I think, is that realistically, okay, great, give it a try. And if it works, fantastic. But this idea, and this is the conversation we've come back to many times, and we had it on the agronomists as well, is that good genetics, do your best job planting or seeding, make sure you got a decent fertility package that isn't skimping on yield potential, and get your weed control in order. And if you focus on those 4 areas, then the weather has to either work or not. But that's really where, in a tough year, focus on those 4 things, and it's amazing what you can do when the weather, of course, actually plays in our favor. I recognize everything eventually becomes Mother Nature's last hurrah. Yeah. So there you go.
For sure. But I mean, Lyndsey, the one thing that we also really need to drive home in this is don't spend big dollars to try an unproven product, because we just got the data from Beck's in the US, right? They're great at doing plots. They publish those plots. You can go on their website. They're publicly available. And I looked at their data for green lightning, and I know there's growers in Ontario that put a green lightning unit in to make this free or low cost nitrogen. And in the Beck's data, the green lightning had the exact same impact as the zero nitrogen treatment. And I hate to pick on one particular product, but there's a product where to put that unit in cost, I don't know, $60,000, something like that. And if it doesn't work, you're invested. And it's just, for goodness sakes, when these new products come along, you got to get product to trial before you spend your money.
Mm-hmm. Really good point is recognizing, hey, try new things, but keep your actual cost and or risk that you're exposed to here, keep it relatively low. And if a company is backing up their product, they should completely understand that and be willing to work with you and help you out on that, which I think is also incredibly important as well. Okay, we're going to leave it there for just a moment. We're going to go to our product spotlight with our show sponsor, FP Genetics, and then I will be back with Peter Repeat Johnson right after this next segment.
While some cereal growers believe a pre-seed or spring application of paradigm-free herbicide is better, others think you get more from a fall application. But what they both agree on is the exceptional broadleaf control of paradigm-free, the convenience of being able to apply in cooler conditions, and its role as an effective resistance management tool. Paradigm-free. Eliminate tough broadleaf weeds before they can become bigger problems. Talk to your local retailer today.
If you're applying a low-rate N stabilizer, you might be falling for a losing strategy. Low-rate products promise great results, but may lack the potency of higher active ingredient concentrations, so great isn't always what you get. Don't put yield at risk. Put your trust in proven solutions. Anval Nitrogen Stabilizer, Super U Premium Fertilizer, and Tribune Nitrogen Stabilizer from Koch Agronomic Services. These products offer higher active ingredient concentrations imitator brands can't match. See the difference at defendyourn.ca.
Questions about the markets? Sanoa by GrainFox is your AI grain market analyst, ready 24/7 to help you make smarter grain marketing decisions. Ask about market trends, pricing signals, basis, or what today's moves mean for you, and get clear, instant answers. Get a free trial and special savings at grainfox.ca/realag. grainfox.ca/realag. Ask Sanoa. Get an answer. Take action. It's that easy. Get started now.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. It's now time for a product spotlight with FP Genetics, and we're joined right now by Chad Yanchycki. He is the sales manager with FP Genetics. How are we doing today, Chad?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Sean.
Okay, man. I know you are very excited at FP, you and your colleagues, about a couple different varieties here for the 2026 growing season.
Yeah, so a couple of varieties I just wanted to touch on quick. For us, AAC Hockley, big wheat variety that we've had here across Western Canada the last several years, just continues to gain momentum. Very consistent variety that farmers are really enjoying. Stands really, really well. Got a nice protein on it, really nice field package on it, phenomenal disease package on it. Goes through the combine really, really nice, and good sprouting tolerance on it as well. So growers are really, really happy with it. And I think one of those varieties that just continues to show consistency across the prairies, and why we continue to see it pick up acres here for us across Western Canada. If I look at the next variety for us, it's SY Manus. A little bit more of a regional fit variety. So we see big acres of it here in Manitoba. And then when you get into southern Alberta, into some of that irrigation country, it's a variety that really likes water. So short in stature, stands really, really well, and puts out the bushels. So it's got a really, really high yield potential to it. So especially if you get those right conditions where you get that moisture in the growing season, it's a variety that's going to push those yield records on your farm for a hard red wheat for sure.
Yeah, and both good from a quality perspective?
Yeah, both great from a quality perspective. So no issues there at all.
I think it's always really important. You know, you mentioned one's a little bit more fits across a wider geography and one's a little bit more fit to purpose in a certain geography. I think it's critical when we're selecting the varieties for the upcoming season or really any season. We really take those kind of things into consideration.
Absolutely.
Look at the whole package of what a variety has to offer, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a big thing. And it's even when we look at selecting varieties as a company going forward, we're really looking at that regional fit for varieties of how they fit versus just a blanket variety for Western Canada for sure.
Well, like any great seed company, you always got to be thinking about the future as well. And I know there's a couple varieties that you're also excited about when we think about 2027 and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one being AAC Walsh. So this is a conventional wheat variety that's going to kind of continue on to that Hockley path that we have already and kind of keep that momentum going. So what you're going to see with that one is probably the top standing variety on the market. It stands so well. Beautiful standability package to it, really strong disease package, much like Hockley there. A little bump in yield over Hockley, and a strong protein to it as well. So from a quality harvestability standpoint, a variety that growers are really going to like to have on their farm. And I think one we'll see pick up steam pretty quickly here across the West. The other one being AAC Walker. It's a midge tolerant variety. So refuge in that variety will be Hockley as well. But it's a really nice midge tolerant variety. So those areas that need that SM1 gene, parts of kind of northwest Manitoba and into Saskatchewan as well. Super exciting variety. And I know at the trade shows here the last several weeks, we've had a lot of people come to the booth to talk about it. It's got a really nice yield potential. So you're going to see a nice yield bump over some of the other midge tolerant varieties we have on the market today, with good standability, really nice protein to it, and a really robust disease package. So something that I think we'll see climbing acres pretty fast.
Yeah, it's always important to be trying to improve and trying to provide that next step when it comes to genetics and how they deliver to growers, right? Like it's something.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work that goes into selecting these varieties.
Big time, yeah. It's something we don't take lightly, and when we look at varieties, we comb through them for many years at a time and many sites at a time to make sure that when we're bringing them to market, they're going to have a good fit here for the Canadian farmers.
Yeah. And now the other thing that's going on at FP Genetics is you've got some additional resources from a staff perspective to serve some of the market. Talk about that.
Yeah, so a couple new positions that we've had here for the last few months. So Eastern and Western product specialists. So a little bit different than what we've typically done. We have a territory manager in each province, so one in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and they primarily work with our seed growers and shareholders to get the production side of things done. And they've done a little bit of work with retail and stuff in between when they had time. With these new positions, really what they're focused on is bringing kind of that next level support to independent agronomists, to farmers themselves, and to the retail locations as well that are selling seed. We see it in a lot of other parts of agriculture that there is that support system there for varieties, and we don't necessarily have as much of that as we'd like to see on a cereal side. So for us, we thought this is an awesome opportunity to bring a couple of people on that can work with the retails, the agronomists, and the growers, really sourcing those varieties for their farm. So we talked a little bit earlier about, finding the right variety for your farm and how it fits on your farm. So that's part of their job, is to go out there and really educate people on why it's great to grow Hockley in this zone or Manus in this zone, or how X variety fits in this zone. So I think you'll see a lot of that over the coming years with them, really identifying the proper fit on farm. And When we look at right now, the dollars that are invested into farms right now and how important it is to get your maximum return on every acre farm, we're hoping we can really help provide that resource for them on selecting the right varieties.
So, Chad, if somebody wants more information on FP Genetics lineup, where do they go? Who do they talk to? Is there a website? Talk to dealers? What do they do?
Yeah, absolutely. Go to the fpgenetics.ca website. Best place to go. All of our contact information is on there from anybody in the company. We're all well equipped on the varieties and where the company's headed. So give any one of us a call and we can point you in the right direction.
Great stuff. Chad, thanks so much for joining us here today on RealAg Radio. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome stuff. Okay, we'll be right back on RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147 right after this quick break.
For oat growers across the Canadian prairies, CDC Endure is the milling oat built to deliver. From Manitoba to Alberta, CDC Endure brings together what prairie producers demand: high grain yield, excellent disease resistance, and the standability needed to handle prairie conditions with the consistency that processors and growers both rely on. Whether you're pushing for top-end yield or premium quality, CDC Endure is ready to perform across the prairies. Learn more at allianceseed.com or call 1-877-270-2890. Since 2009, the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has been providing relevant and timely agronomic advice to anyone involved in canola production. With over 15 years of video content on YouTube, the Canola School has been producers' go-to source for canola agronomy, research, marketing, and more. The Canola School is brought to you by BASF and Invigor Hybrid Canola. Check us out on YouTube or at canolaschool.com.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. It is Monday, February 2nd. Got to get used to saying February. Today's show brought to you by FP Genetics. And joining me once again, it's Peter Wheat Pete Johnson. Pete, is it just my imagination, or have you been having far more questions coming from Western Canada lately?
So, Lyndsey, it's cool. I have been getting more questions from Western Canada, but I'm also getting questions from Ontario and from outside of North America, which is like, so as Lyndsey knows, and everybody listening should know, Pete lives on feedback. So ask me the questions, send them my way. I don't care. Tweet me, email me, text me, and I'll do my best to answer them, because that's just what drives Pete's fun. And so, yes, but yeah, you're right. I have been getting more questions from Western Canada, and that's very cool.
Now, and we're going to unpack several of them, because they also, of course, and this is what I love about what we do here at RealAg, is we can, answer those questions for Western Canada, but we can also tie them into things happening in the States, in Ontario, et cetera. Largely, Pete, because you are so open to people just reaching out. So email him, pjohnson@realagriculture.com, with all your wild and wacky ideas. He loves them all. But let's unpack some of those questions. One that I think, if you've been in the agronomy game any length of time, you've probably come across it, and that is the lodging question. A lodging issue. We often think too much nitrogen, but there's, of course, way more that goes into lodging than that. So bring us up to speed on this latest question on lodging and how you sort of walk through the process of getting to a potential solution.
Yeah, and so a question out of Saskatchewan, and the grower said, Pete, I have to get a handle on the lodging, my wheat lodges, my barley lodges, my oats lodge, and it just, like, where do we start? And he said, so I'm seeding, like, I've asked some questions. I'm seeding 150 pounds of wheat, 120 pounds of barley. I forget, oats were 110 or 100. But regardless, and Lyndsey, as soon as I say those numbers, does that I don't know, does anything jump out at you?
Well, so two things, in that I feel like that's an improvement over where maybe we were 20 years ago, where it would have been bushels per acre. So weight is better, but my question is, weight still doesn't tell you how many plants. Weight just tells you the weight.
Exactly. And so maybe it's better in pounds, but 150 pounds is just 2.5 bushels. And it unfortunately, it gives me no idea of is that seeding rate in the game. And there's so much we can do around this. And there's been a bunch of presentations this winter, Lyndsey, at different conferences around soybeans as well. I think we had this conversation on the Agronomist, or you did the other night, in terms of plant attrition. So you have a target seeding rate, but how many plants do you actually establish? And so this grower, I said to him, you've got to give me a seed count. Like, what does 1,000 seeds weigh? And everybody says, well, that's a lot of work counting out 1,000 seeds. And no, it's not, because you don't count 1,000 seeds. You get a really good scale. You do have to have a good scale, but there's lots of them around. If a grower or an elevator has a good moisture tester, they're going to have a good scale, because you have to weigh the amount of crop to put, or the grain to put into the moisture tester. So you get a good scale. You count 100 seeds. You weigh it. You do that 3 times, so you have to count 300 seeds. And as long as those 3 weights are reasonably close, you just say, okay, so 100 seeds weighs, let's say 3.8 grams. So 1,000 seeds are going to weigh 38 grams. And now I have my 1,000 kernel weight. And now I can use that 150 pounds and convert it to actually how many seeds per acre I'm putting in the ground. And so I did that with this grower. He sent me the fact that he had, the number was 38 grams per 1,000 kernels. So his 150 pounds per acre is 1.8 million seeds per acre. And for spring wheat in Western Canada, 1.8 million seeds is crazy high. So right out the gate, you've got a lodging issue. Well, and again, you would have to know attrition of those 1.8 million seeds, how many actually established a plant. But as soon as you plant that high a seeding rate, you have increased your chances of lodging, and you just need to cut back from that 150 pounds. You need to get back to around 1.5 million, something in that range. And again, there's quite a range depending on moisture conditions, depending on a lot of other things. But to start off with, take the 150 and put it down to 125 or 130 pounds per acre, and almost for sure, your lodging will be less. And in his barley and oat crop, he didn't send me the seed weight, so I can't comment there. But we can do a much better job in all crops. And it's funny because we do it in corn. In corn, we know that we seeded, pick a number, we seeded 34,000. And then we go out and we count that stand and we say, oh gosh, I only had 31,000 established. What did I do wrong? Or you say, oh, I've got 33.5. That's really good. But we don't go back nearly as often in the soybean crop, in the cereal crops, and figure out what's our actual final plant stand, because that's what really matters.
We do it, I will say, we do it more in canola, and probably for good reason, right? It's a small seed. We can have a lot of seed mortality. But you're right. It really does pay to go back and verify. Now, I do want to just touch on a few other things. And there was another question about lodging, but lodging also, of course, so it's population, but there are other factors, of course, nitrogen, row width. And we just had a wheat school that looked at some record wheat yields. Where did that conversation on plant density and row width play out?
Yeah, so really cool, Lyndsey, and people, I'll promote that video a little bit, even though I'm the guy that got to interview Mark Stubbs. So Bern Tobin was behind the camera, but he let me do the interviewing, and Mark Stubbs was our feature wheat speaker at the Southwest Ag Conference. He's from the UK. And he has grown 235 bushel per acre wheat. And you just go like, man, Pete can't grow that much corn per acre, let alone wheat. And so you're right. When we talk about plant density, you go to the UK and those growers, they can tell you that they seed 400 seeds per meter squared, and that they actually get out of that 350 plants, live plants per square meter, and then they know their head count. So one of the things about really high yield growers and about real wheat growing areas is that they do tend to treat wheat like a real crop, the way that we treat corn and canola. So that's cool. But in Mark's case, because I mean, I've worked or talked to Eric Watson lots, and Eric was the world record holder. He's from New Zealand, and most growers that grow really high yield crops don't seed high seeding rates. But Mark is the opposite because he's got a real blackgrass problem, and some growers in North America, on Western Canada or Canada in general, won't know what blackgrass is, but it's basically a winter annual foxtail. And so you can imagine you plant winter wheat, if it's got heavy blackgrass pressure, they can lose 50% of their wheat yield. And one of the management strategies is take the blackgrass out before you plant the wheat. And blackgrass tends to germinate earlier in the window of seeding their wheat. So he tries to plant his wheat late. And in so doing, he then ups his seeding rate. And he's in that range of 400 seeds per square meter, which is pretty heavy seeding rate, particularly when you're in the UK. But he knows he's doing that, and he's doing it for a purpose. And the other thing I would say that's really a common theme is, man, you go to high yield areas and they're all growing wheat on narrower rows. So he's a 5-inch row wheat grower. Almost all the high yield guys are 5-inch row wheat, or sometimes a little bit less. And you just go, wow, that's really interesting. So we're just putting those plants further apart from each other. And there's some really good work out of the UK that says if you could equidistant space those wheat plants, you could get 0.5 ton per acre more wheat yield. And the narrow rows get you that much closer to that. And so, yeah, I encourage people to watch that. I encourage people to watch Mark's session from the Southwest Ag Conference. If you are part of the Ontario Ag Conference group of conferences, it's recorded and available, and just lots of great insights there. The other thing, Lyndsey, that Mark talks about that, again, goes back to our original discussion in the first segment is, man, he's got to get his soil health right. He builds that soil up with manures and with compost so that he's got really good base fertility and really good tilth in the soil to let those roots grow and access nutrients and water.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so many lessons on that one, and you're exactly right. Head on over to our YouTube channel, or to wheatschool.com. You'll see it there. And yes, you can watch the entire conversation or presentation, if you signed up for SWAC. See, SWAC is that gift that keeps giving, Pete. You actually have to sign up.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you can watch these things. Okay. We're going to, let's pause there for a moment. We still have one more segment, and we've got 3 or 4 other things to tackle. So we might have to work through these a little bit quicker. But we're going to take a quick break here on RealAg Radio on Rural Radio, channel 147, Sirius XM, brought to you by FP Genetics.
Time to get excited about your fields again thanks to Excite Bio Yield Plus. It's a phosphate solubilizing ag biological that works on oilseeds, cereals, and legumes. For 15 years, we've been helping farmers achieve healthier plants and higher yields with our premium liquid inoculants. For more information on Excite Bio Yield Plus or one of our other premium products, call 1-855-948-3246 or visit excitebio.ca. That's XITEBIO.ca. At Excite Bio, inoculants and ag biologicals, it's all we do.
Whether you're running a farm operation, in a career within an organization, starting your own business, looking for your dream job, operating a company in ag or food, or want to hone your overall life skills, this conference is for you. Celebrating over 10 years of bringing women in ag and food together, join the Advancing Women Conference in Calgary on March 8th, 9th, and 10th. Visit advancingwomenconference.ca for more information and to register. Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, channel 147, Sirius XM. I am your host on this Agronomic Monday, Lyndsey Smith. Today's show brought to you by FP Genetics. FP Genetics brings new seed genetics to Canadian farms, empowering growers to thrive in ever-changing conditions. Visit fpgenetics.ca and join thousands of Canadian growers who trust FP Genetics to deliver innovative, reliable seed genetics season after season. Experience the next wave with FP Genetics. All right, Pete, for our final segment here on this Agronomic Monday, it is just flying by. I do want to, there's a couple things that are coming up I want to send a shout out to. One of them, of course, is tonight's episode of The Agronomist. I'm super excited about it. We are going to talk forages, but not just perennial forage. We're going to talk about annual cereals and where they might fit. So we've got Joanna Fallings and Christine O'Reilly joining me for tonight's episode. Very excited about that. But this does dovetail into a couple of the questions that you've also been getting. Specifically, an Alberta grower who's growing forage is asking about sulfur, nitrogen, etc. But you've got to back up a step, sort of like the whole seeding rate and lodging issue. Backing up a step, what do you have to say for growers who are trying to tackle some of their forage issues on the nutrient side? Because I feel like this is a perpetual question on, are we feeding our forages enough?
Yeah, and so Lyndsey, it really does come down to you have to step back and look at the whole agronomic fertility package. And this grower is trying to do that, and that's great. And there's another grower who sent me just tons of data out of Manitoba. And it was quite clear in his data, because he ran the trials, replicated trials, and he ran 0 phosphorus, 20 pounds per acre of P2O5, 40 pounds per acre of P2O5. And his response at 20 pounds per acre of P2O5, like that blew 0 away. It was just, I forget exactly the number, but it was a huge yield response to just that little bit of phosphorus right with the seed. The 40 pounds of phosphorus just added another bushel or two, and it wasn't economical. So the problem there is that the data on a 1-year basis says 20 pounds of phosphorus is enough. And this is the sufficiency model that we've talked about for years, where in that 1-year information, man, that's the way to go. The problem is, and this is the problem I think with the Alberta grower, he's taking barley as a forage, he's grazing his cows on corn, and when you take that barley forage, and he was worried about his nitrogen and his sulfur, he's looking for a different way to put sulfur on, because he has to put that, or he was putting that in his seed band, and it makes it so he can't put enough other things in. So in Western Canada, elemental sulfur, or even better yet, the micronized sulfur, man, those products really work in Western Canada because you don't get the leaching through the soil profiles. So if it's there in the fall, it's still there in the spring. It's not quite the case in Eastern Canada. So we have a little different scenario. But in the particular situation in Alberta, he really needed to start broadcasting, or needs to start broadcasting sulfur and getting more phosphorus and hopefully more nitrogen into his starter fertilizer program. And of course, burn is always an issue, particularly with the nitrogen, but he was putting 30 pounds of phosphorus down on his forage barley, and for sure, on a 1-year basis, that's likely the most economic. But his phosphorus soil tests were all single digit, and some down as low as 3 parts per million. And you just go, we need more phosphorus. Like, we have to, the 30 pounds is not replacing what the crop is taking off. And he's done it enough years, or maybe it was inherent to start with, but you gotta get more phosphorus on there at some point. And this is probably not the year to do it, because phosphorus is expensive, and crop prices are low. But we have to look at that balance and what's naturally occurring, and not get ourselves into these situations where we have really low soil tests.
Well, and this question also of, there's this balance too of, as you mentioned, maybe not the right year to really correct or try to build anything. Okay, fine. But also there's the year over year impact too, is that, as you mentioned, if you start out a little low and then you've been shorting it over time, it becomes a larger and larger problem that you do have to try and fix, which is going to cost more. So there is this balance between, okay, maybe it's not the year to build, but you don't want to be impacting yield potential by shorting it that much more. So it's a tough call on where that number should be. But as a forage grower myself, I know that we don't even come close at times to to putting nearly enough back on with fertility. And granted, that might look different on every farm. It might be that you're putting manure back on. It might be that you're grazing versus haying. But, depending on annual versus perennial, whatever the case may be, we just have to look at this fertility question way closer and make sure that we're actually investing in these forages. Now, one of the questions that I'm sure will come up tonight, and I'm sure Joanna Fallings is going to tell us all about, is triticale. Triticale is near and dear to my heart. It was developed at the University of Manitoba, and so I love it. It's a very cool looking cereal. But Pete, you were told that by someone that, hey, triticale doesn't lodge. You can throw everything at it. You're all good. Drive on. Do you think that's true?
So Lyndsey, at the Eastern Ontario Crop Conference last week, they had a session similar to what you're going to do tonight with Christine O'Reilly and Joanna Fallings. And one of the growers they had on the panel said, triticale doesn't lodge. I put 200 pounds on, even in my nitrogen overlaps. I just can't make it lodge. But rye, on the other hand, cereal rye will lodge. And so last week on The Word, I said, okay, I sort of question that because I think we can make any cereal lodge, but will triticale lodge? And I've had several people tell me that, yes, in my situation, if I put 200 pounds, or actually the one grower, 180 pounds of nitrogen onto my triticale, it is flat. So there's limits to everything. And the grower that put 180 pounds on said there's a huge difference in triticale varieties in terms of how they stand as a forage. And, our product spotlight, Lyndsey, was on FP genetics. And man, genetics matter even in forage production, from a yield, from a protein, from a lodging standpoint. All of those things really matter. Well,
and especially and that's one of the things I want to ask Joanna about tonight, is especially as we look at these annual forage solutions or shoulder season, right? Like growing them as a cover crop, but maybe taking them as a cut of forage or grazing them off. Like we really do. And I've run into this just in the past few years with oats, as a cover crop or for forage, where producers are buying, common seed basically, and they have no idea if it has any sort of rust resistance whatsoever. And turns out, spoiler alerts, it does not. And so I do think that it does, the point of, variety selection becomes even more important as we also shift our production practices to maybe be using an annual crop a little bit differently, or even a fall seeded crop a little bit differently than we used to.
Absolutely. And in fact, Lyndsey, back in Shane and I, my great technician, we did a bunch of these annual forages after winter wheat in Ontario. We also looked at the winter annual forages, but it's really interesting because we got a forage oat from Western Canada to try in our trials in Ontario. And that forage oat, it just stayed like a lawn. It never got the right day length to get it to head out. And so its yield was nothing almost, because it wasn't like the Ontario oats. It had different day length requirement, and we just didn't get any growth out of it. So there's huge differences from that perspective.
Mm-hmm. All right. All of this talk of greenery has me very excited for spring, Pete. I won't lie. Okay. Shifting gears, we have a few last questions I did want to touch on. One out of Alberta, on wheat response to a couple different things. So back to your favorite crop, wheat. Starter fertilizer, fungicide, late nitrogen. Walk me through the conversation with this grower from Alberta on wheat's response.
Oh, okay. Sorry, that actually wasn't a grower from Alberta. That is out of Michigan.
Oh, okay.
And that is a research paper out of Kurt Steinke and Marty Chilver's program in Michigan. And it's a grad student. I forget the name, but wow, the response to wheat was just astounding. And we have to dig a little more in depth. But when they used late nitrogen in concert with a fungicide at either flag leaf or at T3 at heading timing, they doubled straw yield. And you just go, well, how can that even work? Because to double straw yield, and late nitrogen didn't increase grain yield a lot. It did increase grain protein, but didn't have a huge impact on yield most of the time. And the fungicide, it didn't have a huge yield increase, a little bit of a yield increase, but we get double the straw. And it's like, okay, so late nitrogen means the plant is going to have, more nitrogen. Nitrogen tends to keep the plant green. We put the fungicide on. Well, what does a fungicide do? It gives us stay green in the plant. And so I think they got double the straw yield because they just kept the plant so healthy right through to maturity that the leaves didn't blow away, the stems didn't deteriorate, and like that outcome was astounding. They also, by the way, at some low soil test sites, and this goes back to our earlier discussion about, too much phosphorus coming off from a forage crop, they got up to a 35%, yes, 35% yield gain from starter fertilizer applied to a wheat crop in the fall. Now, that had some sulfur in it as well, and there's more to that story, but 35%, that's unbelievable, but that's what the data is.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the keys there is knowing whether or not you've got, like, what your base fertility is, if you've got sort of a responsive site or not. And that really, you don't know it unless you're soil testing, unless you're actually running some of these trials. And I think this is one of the things that I know, Pete, you hit on, but I think it's important to recognize is that we have to, or a lot of the reasons why we ask these questions or run some of these trials is we're trying to be confident in the decision that we make is going to have the outcome we expect. And so understanding, what you've got there for fertility, what the crop is going to use, all of those things that interplay helps to inform whether or not you'll get a response, which response is another way to say ROI, really.
Oh, yep. And you can't manage what you don't measure. So make sure you measure.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, we have just a few moments left. I did want to touch on, so a reminder, of course, tonight, The Agronomist, 8 p.m. Eastern. Join us on YouTube or go to realagriculture.com/agronomists at 8 p.m. Eastern. Join us for the conversation. It happens every Monday, except for holiday Mondays. And we always enjoy having people in the comments live to chat about things. But there's also a soil compaction event happening all of February that I would love to give a shout out to. So Pete, where will you be Tuesday mornings for the month of February?
So it's the Northern Soil Compaction Conference, and the speaker lineup, Lyndsey, is just incredible. It's every Tuesday morning for the whole month of February. And if you Google the Northern Soil Compaction Conference, it'll take you to it. It's North Dakota, it's Minnesota, it's Manitoba, it's Ontario. It's a huge conglomerate of compaction focused people that have come together to put this out. I'm actually one of the presenters, not tomorrow, but a week from tomorrow. I will be talking about the hidden costs of compaction, but there's so much to unwrap there. So yes, that's where I will be Tuesday mornings in February. And if I can't make a Tuesday morning, they are recorded and will be available for participants after, so that if you can't make it that Tuesday, you can still watch.
Mm-hmm. It's something we do here at RealAg. We've been doing it for years. We record pretty much everything and host it either on our site or on YouTube. And I'm glad that everybody, it's the one, I'm going to say, it's a one positive outcome of the COVID years is recorded online meetings. Okay, so there you go. That's the one little thing I'm going to take forward on that one. I hope that the groundhog didn't see a shot. I can't remember which one it is, Pete, but all we know is we hope we're on the downward slide towards warmer days and spring, and of course, kicking off a new season. I do want to also mention this particular month is incredibly satisfying for anybody who really likes order, in that we started on a Sunday and we'll end on a Saturday, a perfect 4 weeks in February. So I'm taking that as a good sign. It's an oracle, Pete.
I like it.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Pete. And we'll leave it there. We'll talk to you again this week. I actually get to host the Farmer Rapid Fire on Thursday. So check that out. But of course, your regular host, Sean Haney, is back tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here on RealAg Radio. Really appreciate it. And thank you, of course, to our show sponsor, FP Genetics. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this RealAg Radio podcast, brought to you by the Authority brand family of herbicides from FMC. With 3 options for extended pre-seed and pre-emergent weed control, Authority herbicides help growers start clean and stay ahead. Visit your local FMC retailer to find the Authority herbicide solution that fits your farm.